that we posted on our Facebook page. And what's our Facebook page, Tony?
Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, which I am monitoring as we speak. And, of course, I monitor Twitter at Coalition_radio. And a big thank you to everybody listening on Spreaker tonight, which, as we go live, I bump us on the Spreaker and the little blast goes out so everybody can listen in on their phones and on their iPads. And hopefully soon, announced this week, Apple is going to be available in cars. So you can, in your car, you'll be able to listen to the Coalition through iTunes. So it's almost like being over the air is starting to become obsolete, P.O.
No, I agree. I mean, we could actually do a full-blown analysis of the future of AM, FM broadcast radio versus internet listening. I mean, a dominant share of our listeners really are internet-based, are they not?
It's true, and specifically, something I've been trying to do over the past few years is get people who aren't necessarily interested or haven't utilized internet broadcasting into internet broadcasting, and that's why if you go to coalitionradio.us, I've made it as simple as possible. So you don't have to hunt around for the player. You don't have to download anything. Just go to coalitionradio.us and you can instantly start listening.
Exactly. Well, this is, our theme for today was going to be why, if the state of Rhode Island is, in a sense, socialist workers' paradise, why is it failing so completely? I mean, a lot of people object to that term socialist. They raise their hackles. But ultimately, we have to whatever economy we have, it's largely government-based. We have extreme centralized control over every facet of the economy. We provide one of the highest safety net rates, if you will, to the underprivileged. On every single level, really, the government has completely replaced healthcare, education, just about everything has really replaced quote-unquote free enterprise. So one has to question two things in my mind. Is it the core competence of the people running it, as we're starting to talk about now? Or is it the very notion that a centralized planned economy like Rhode Island can ever be successful? I'm not aware. Now, we've been operating under this democratic regime now for 3 generations. One could argue.
I'm going to let you finish, but I'm going to take umbrage at democratic regime.
Okay. All right. So we've been operating under an extreme democratic bootstrapping, fascist. I'm sorry, just joking.
I won't take umbrage at fascists.
Okay. For 3 generations now. We've got a constitutionally weak governor. So although, and believe me, the Republican Party, as far as I'm concerned, is guilty of most of the evil in the world, just because they are. And actually, most of that stems from the Rhode Island Republican Party. But that said, why...
All 3 of them.
Exactly.
Those guys can come get us if they're willing to climb 8 flights of stairs here.
We have friends of the show here. Rue Reese is a good guy. Dawson Hodgson, we are 100% behind in the show, even though the coalition is a variety of backgrounds politically and a lot of thoughts. There's some really good guys who happen to operate under
individual candidates need to be evaluated on an individual basis.
But why is this state such a complete and utter hopeless failure?
When you say we've had this democratic regime over time, that raises my hackles, because I look at the way some of these quote Democrats vote, and they're the furthest thing from a Democrat.
Yeah, they really are. They run as a Democrat because it gives them the D after their name.
The Republican Party in this state is 4 times bigger than anybody thinks it is, but most of the people run with D's next to their name because they know that politically that's what you do to take office.
Right.
Look at from your town, Cumberland, right? Karen McBeth.
Oh, do we have to
look at Mr. Russo?
Look at these crazy, right out of right-wing think tanks, right out of the Heritage Institution, right out of these crazy abortion laws, forcing women to have ultrasounds, and before they go through with an abortion. This is something that you hear about happening in Texas and Missouri, and those are certainly not bastions of democratic rule.
Right.
What's your friend Chris Young?
Yes.
He's running as a Democrat, I think.
Oh, jeez.
but
that's
here,
the thing.
And there's the old, who was it? I can't think of who said it, but I don't belong to an organized political party. I'm a Democrat.
Right.
Well, and then there's the libertarians. But
I think that there has to be, sure, there's a lot of shades of gray. There's a lot of room in the tent for a lot of people, but there has to be some cutoff where, if you're gonna, let's say, let's look at same-sex marriage. If you're gonna call yourself a Democrat, I'm sorry, you got to be for it. Like that to me is a line that says, hey,
that's a litmus test.
Yeah, you're not for this. Guess what? You're not a Democrat.
So then the question, I as the PO taxpayer, I am proud to belong to the Progressive Democrats of Rhode Island Facebook page. Nice group of people. There's some people there who write some really good stuff. The gentleman Sam Bell, who successfully took on the NRA. And I happen to be pro Second Amendment, but I'm happy anytime people become activists and take on large forces and win. It's all good as far as I'm concerned. They seem to occupy, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but my take, and please inform me if I'm right or wrong, is that they see the future of the progressive movement, which I distinguish from liberalism, as working over and taking over the Democratic Party. In very much the same way certain libertarians see their future as assuming control of the Republican Party. Is that possible?
I don't know, because, we've talked about this before, like the mission, right? You as a libertarian, myself as a member of the Green Party, we know what our parties are all about. Our parties know what our parties are all about. The Democrats and Republicans live to self-propagate. There's no mission. There's no checklist of when we get these things done, we can dissolve the party, because they're just in it to propagate themselves and to continue their hold on power.
Right.
But we'll just look at the contortions the Republican Party was going through right after the 2012 presidential election. They were anti-immigration reform until the minute they lost, and then suddenly they announced that they had to rethink that. Like,
welcome in Hispanics, please.
Do you stand for anything? There are principal cases to be made along various points about that. Pick one, pick a few, discuss them, but don't flop this way and that way based on whether or not you think it's going to get you elected. Figure out what you mean. Figure out what you stand for.
Major parties, though, both have done that systemically as the pendulum has swung back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
The Democrats, post Al Gore defeat, went through the same type of iterations. What do we believe in? Well, if you have to ask, you really know. But let's channel the conversation into two areas. You've got political philosophy and a measure of the success of the political philosophy, and then there's also the operation of day-to-day government. All right? And in both cases, Rhode Island is an abject failure, to the point where I constantly put out the challenge, is there a single thing that the state of Rhode Island government does well?
The interlocal exchange. Never heard of it?
Actually, I have. That's the insurance?
Yeah. And I'd be willing to, most of the folks in Rhode Island who are listening to this show right now have never heard of the interlocal exchange.
Essentially, that's a risk pool for...
It's an insurance pool, basically.
Right, for
municipalities.
Okay.
And you know why they've never heard of it? Because it works.
And they haven't figured out a way to make money
because
off it?
when government works the way it's supposed to,
it's not.
It's silent. It doesn't make waves.
It's not the stone in your shoe.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And this is something that's functioned for, almost 30 years, I think.
And actually,
now
that's a good point.
State.
If the roads weren't a disaster, we wouldn't be commenting on how swell they are. We would just be driving on them.
Exactly. Right. And I think that a lot of that plays into the Rhode Island malaise, where it's the good cop, bad cop syndrome. You never hear somebody, ranting and raving about, how nice this cop was to them and the favor that this guy did. But as soon as the guy writes him what he thinks is an unfair ticket, it's like Facebook and Twitter and calling the radio shows. And
I actually did say something nice about the Barrington cop who pulled me over for speeding. And I will say something nice about the East Providence cop who pulled me over with my expired inspection sticker. Thank you, sir.
Exactly.
Please, sir.
But you're certainly,
I didn't have to pay a lot of money.
You're certainly in the minority when it comes to that type of reaction.
But look at the other functions of government, though. I mean, let's look down. I mean, I applaud the fact that we've got our Insurance Act together, probably because we have lots of practice writing checks to people. But education. I mean, we are
abysmal.
All right, we are a democratic state that's run by and large in a municipal union dominated environment where the big player are the variety of national teachers and local teachers unions. And yet, we have one of the highest rates of expenditure per student in the world, seemingly, or at least in the United States. And we have one of the lowest rates of success. And yet, we are run by a group of people, including Mr. Chafee, who is now a Democrat, on down the line, who espouse to care nothing more in life than they care about the children. And yet, I can't think of a single area where we are nothing less than an educational apocalypse here. We are a holocaust here educationally. We have created a generation of morons, by and large. And the fault isn't with the kids. The fault ultimately resides with the people who are running the show while the kids were there.
Well, I think that there's a home aspect to that too. I mean, I discipline shouldn't end at the end of the day bell, and nor should education begin in kindergarten. And I think
how if you're let me just jump in for a second. I always joke about this. I live 200 yards away from better schools, lower taxes, a lower unemployment rate. I can see it. Every day I go to do the jobs that people from Massachusetts won't do.
Like Sarah Palin seeing Russia.
Exactly.
Does it look like a Thomas Kincaid painting?
Yeah, with little twinkly lights.
No, my life will never be a Thomas Kincaid painting.
That's probably a good thing.
All right.
Based on the stories I've heard about
mine
Mr.
is an
Kincaid.
Elvis on velvet painting. Mine are the dogs playing poker. All right. But I can see over the border. Are you telling me that the parental involvement in nearby Massachusetts, which has got towns like Springfield, Holyoke, the Riv, Worcester. I mean, some towns that are in terrible. Lawrence, are you going to tell me that there's a marked difference 500 feet away in Attleboro, which is one of the poorer communities in this part of New England? I refuse to accept anymore the notion that it's the parents' fault. Are a lot of parents losers?
I'm not.
Absolutely.
And I'm not placing the blame squarely on bad parenting or bad schooling. I think it's a combination of both. I think that the administrations of our schools, the fact that we allow kids' brains to languish for 3 months out of a year over summer vacation.
But so do the people from Mass. I'm just trying to square up. Why is it Rhode Island, which again is, I tease you when I say this, but is socialist worker paradise, all right? And Massachusetts over here, which isn't exactly a right-wing. If it weren't for Rhode Island, Massachusetts would be one of the bluest of blue states. So why is Massachusetts so successful and we suck?
See, it's not the Democratic problem. It's the people who get entrenched in power, do nothing, and basically dig themselves into these little positions. It's hard to get rid of incumbents because people aren't thinking. But people are looking at it as, oh, good. My representative brought some pork home to my district. My representative got the pothole in front of my house fixed. Therefore, he's doing a good job.
My representative got 5 cents knocked off the gas tax.
Right.
Which helps my gas station.
Yeah, or 5 cents knocked off my property tax.
My representative is trying to pass a law that forces fathers of divorced parents to assume all the bills for college.
All the bills?
Yeah, or something insane like that. My representative is trying to force legislation that would force ultrasounds and all sorts of divine intervention if someone chooses to have an abortion. My representative, Lady Macbeth, is all over the map. My representative claims always to have been lied to, and when every single bill that she just looks the other way from House leadership comes down the pike, then later doth protest too much.
And this is why P.O. can't come within 200 feet of his representative.
Yeah.
So,
I think I'm moving to your town so I can run for office. I think I can have a lot of fun over there.
Looking at the education problem, we certainly don't have a higher education problem here in the state. We have some of the finest universities in the country.
And they're all private.
And they're all private.
Right.
And kids graduate from them, and by and large, they get the heck out of Rhode Island.
As quickly as possible. My little one's got a countdown, by the way.
So we have to, in some way, start doing right by those kids. And I think the first thing to do is square up how we fund our schools. There's still a huge debate as to the quote fair funding formula.
And I get that, but to my argument, and I understand your point about some of these Democrats being Republicans in sheep's clothes, but ultimately, this state is run by teachers' unions and a democratically not only controlled.
It's a machine. We've got machine politics.
Right.
Basically.
But by a national party that espouses the plight of the common man, even though the real unemployment rate is in double digits.